Well, good morning, Jamie. It is good to have you on another podcast.
It's good to be here.
Do you know why I say it's good to have you on another podcast?
On another podcast. Oh, because I've never actually done one by myself.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I'd be interested to see if you'd ever do one by yourself.
That would be interesting. Maybe I'll try it.
Whoa. Now that is something that's a little bit interesting.
All right, you're excused, Jeff. I've got a lot to say.
All right, later, folks. Enjoy Jamie and the conversation today.
Just kidding. I've got some great questions, actually, that I'm excited to ask you.
How are you, fellow streakers? It is good to be with you. We are excited for our conversation today because we're going to talk a little bit. We left off last time speaking a little bit about engagement and how you can't go after engagement directly and how having a B statement, a professional B statement, because this month in April, we've been talking all about how you use streaks to develop in your professional life, and what it is that you employ in order to become the person who you want to be professionally. What we were talking about last time, if you already listened, we apologize for a little bit of the repeat here. And by the way, welcome new streakers. We get new streakers every single week. We continue to grow every single week. And welcome. We're glad to have you. And hopefully you'll be able to find this conversation that Jamie and I have with each other. And we invite other streakers on the show at different times as well, that it will be beneficial and something that you enjoy. So with that being said, professional B statements, engagement, all of that. What we were talking about is how when you are in your job, all right, let's call it your job right now, how do you get engaged in a job?
Right.
And if you're looking at that job and saying, well, if my boss were to come to me and say, okay, we're going to work on engagement today, what can we do to get engaged?
Well, that was what was interesting, as you had mentioned, because you often help companies set WIGs or wildly important goals for the entire company or for a set group of that company. And when you've said that when people come to me and say, we want our goal to be engagement, you say to them, that's a terrible goal.
It just is.
Why do you say that?
When you have think of it in this way. Think if anyone came up to you, and so your profession, your main profession is being a mom, and I come up to you and say, okay, we're going to work on your engagement with the family. Not
feeling like you're so engaged. We're going to, or I guess that's it. That's what's implying is that if you're saying we're going to work on your engagement, then obviously you don't think I'm engaged as much as you think I should be.
Exactly. And so how does that make you feel?
Automatically defensive.
Yeah, I'm immediately defensive because
what do you mean I need to be more engaged? Yeah. And it discounts everything that I'm doing.
And what I would do is I would say to you, I'd say, well, if you gave me something to get engaged about, I would do it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, well, give me something, boss. I'd love to have something to be engaged about.
Maybe if this was in any way fun or exciting, I'd be more engaged.
Therefore, when you're looking at setting, and just talking about that for a second, by the way, Chris McChesney, who wrote the foreword to our book, he just published the second edition of the 4 Disciplines of Execution, and it's great. It was published on April 20th, has some really great new insights in it. He, along with 3 other authors, he's got Sean Covey and also Jim Hewling. Jim Hewling, who we've been on his podcast.
We need to have him on ours.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Jim Hewling, Chris McChesney, the people who I have the opportunity to associate with and you have the opportunity to associate with, they're just great people. Mm-hmm. Also on that book was BJ Walker and one of my colleagues, Scott Thiel, who was my mentor in consulting and is just a phenomenal individual that has great thought process. Anyway, just a little side note, just because you mentioned wildly important goals, I thought I'd throw out there the 4 Disciplines of Execution. If you want anything on team goal setting or organizational goal setting, it is the quintessential book of executing on your wildly important goals. So with that, as a little bit of a backdrop, Jamie has her hands on her chin and she's just looking at me. What happens is when people say, we really need more engagement, the question is not, how do I get more engagement? The question is, well, what do they have to get engaged in? Why am I engaged in this particular job, in this particular task, in this particular result that I'm trying to get? Why? What is it that, what's the inspiration of the engagement, which is where we got to professional B statements. When I know what it is I'm chasing. I want to be responsive. In order to be responsive, what do I need to do? Well, I need to respond to people.
Right.
If they call, text, email, I need to respond to them in a timely way. And I loved how you said it on our last podcast. It's about the person on the other end of the communication. It's not about the communication itself.
Right. It's not about the task that you're doing, but about the person that's affected by that task.
And so when you strive to go after engagement for engagement's sake, it fails miserably.
Okay.
Whereas when you go after something that you're inspired to do, for example, you with Bowen's struggling reading. You're not reading with him because you just want to read. You're engaged with him because you want him to be successful at whatever it is he chooses to do in his life. And as a mother and a professional mother of 7 children and running a household, you can get lost in the tasks of the day.
Right.
I think about, for example, how many times you and I have had the conversation where you said, I've got to help. I can't lose my focus on all the things that I've got, tasks that you're doing, and lose focus on what it is that I want to accomplish. I want to continue to be engaged with Bone and Chance.
Right. And I think that's what inspired the conversation initially this morning is and maybe engagement is something that as human beings, as human nature, things go up and things go down. And you come off of a big event or something big and maybe your engagement goes down for a little while.
You speak from experience, don't you?
Yes, our last big event. Well, I just was thinking as I look back at life.
Last big event was the big marriage.
The big wedding. And so, a lot of engagement to make something happen. And then after a big event.
Sorry, if you're new, our 3rd daughter just got married 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And after that big event, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I had in my head, I'll come back and all these things that I've put on the back burner that because of the wedding, now I'll really be energized and excited to do because the big thing that I've been planning has happened and it was great. But I came back and I was tired.
I'm a big pile of goo on the floor.
I did. Well,
the Monday after we got back, do you remember that? We were both just like,
which I expected. I expected a day or two of being like, okay, I'm tired. But it took a lot longer than a day. It took a good... Well, I just feel maybe I'm still fighting it. It's been 10 days, 2 weeks. It takes a while to gear back up. And I think we go through life where there's times where we're really strongly engaged in things. And then there's times that we're just not.
Okay, we need to pause right here because this is a significant point. So we're going to pause. We're all going to take a breath together. Here's the significant point. You just said you came off a huge engagement. You felt like a pile of goo. You weren't feeling like motivated to do anything. Did you break any streak?
Nope. None of them.
Why?
Because they were simple, laughably simple. So there were several days that I did the simple part of it. I simply did the simple part of it, the least of it. So I have a couple journal entries that were pretty short during some of those days. I also have a couple journal entries that were pretty long during those days. It's always fascinating to me that the streak gets you started. And once you've done the laughably simple, you've succeeded. So if that's all you're doing that day, you can quit at that point because you've done what you said you were going to do. You've kept your commitment. You've kept that streak alive.
So I'm going to push on this just a little bit. So why not just take a break? Why not just let the streak lapse, relax a little bit, take a week, really get yourself back grounded again, and then start it? Why is it so important in your mind to do that laughably small thing?
That's a really good question because I do feel like it is okay to take time and just be like, just take time and relax. You don't have to be doing everything all the time. The thing that and I'm just going to answer this for myself.
Please do.
The thing that you
do happen to be the author, so I'm really curious about this.
The thing that I recognize is that, one, the starting up is not always as easy as we think it's going to be. It takes a lot of energy to get something started when you've completely stopped it. 2, I have grown to realize that my streaks give me energy. They are, even if I do the simplest part of the streak, it gives me, I feel good about myself. I feel good that I'm doing the things that are important to me, even when I'm tired, even when it's a little bit hard, especially when I've spent a lot of energy doing things that other people have needed from me. It's good to have that feeling that I'm not completely letting go of the things that are important to me. And then over the years, I've come to realize that even a little bit continuous makes a big difference. So even on a day that I'm tired and I'm like, and those days where you're like, I'm taking a break from life today, I don't want to take a break from my streaks. I can do the simple part of them if I want, but it doesn't make me feel better to take a break from my streaks anymore. I don't feel that way.
That's fascinating. I mean, as I think about it, because it was a huge event. I mean, we drove cross country. It was a great celebration, a phenomenal family gathering, wonderful opportunity to reconnect. And when we got home, we were very tired from this climactic event. And yet neither one of us broke a streak.
And I think back to it and I'm like, hey, that means I really am being the person I want to be.
Yeah.
In addition to all the other stuff that I'm doing, I'm still on a daily basis striving to be the person I want to do. And the beautiful part of streaking is because of the methodology, keep it laughably simple. Mm-hmm. Keep a record of it.
Yeah.
Have a community around it because of the simplicity of those laws, but also the importance that they are laws. As you keep it, it gives the streak, it empowers you as a person.
I really love that. I'm pausing because I'm just thinking about the depth of what it is that you're saying and how significant it is. And something that you and I had talked about being able to suspend disbelief long enough to allow the streak to work in your life. And here's one of the thoughts that I've been having is I've been working with sales professionals. I've often shared with them the thought of what you need is a streak. And it's almost poo-pooed. It's almost looked at as like, oh, that's too simple. I need to really go for something big.
I wouldn't say almost. I say it is. That's what on our last podcast, I mentioned wanting to give dedicated time to this book that I'm reading. There is something inside of us that says when we think something is important, we need to show that importance by the quality of time that we're giving. It's important.
I would say it's not even the quality of time only. It's the quantity. It's the
quality.
Big, I need 2 hours every single day to really sink into this.
Yes. And so we're okay to say, I'm not going to do anything on it until I can really give it what its due. Give it its due. Yeah. And so instead of doing a little bit, which it almost seems insulting. Like you want to read this great book, so you're going to read a paragraph a day. Like, is it really that important to you if you're only going to read a paragraph a day or whatever the thing is? There's something inside of us that says to do something laughably simple would be insulting to that thing. This is important. It needs a lot more than that.
But here's the whole crux and paradox of the matter. So I won't do it at all.
Exactly.
So that's not insulting. Well, because I can't give it the time, energy, and effort that it really deserves and needs,
I'm not going to do it at all right now.
And I've seen so many sales professionals that do not progress in their professional lives because it's like if I can't give really big things or if I can't get really big results, in other words, they're putting their focus on the accomplishment rather than on the input, on what it is I do on a daily basis to become this professional that serves clients completely, or back to what Danny said, to be an engineer, or over to Talon, which we're going to have Talon on before we're done with our professional streak or our professional discussion on streaks. But Talon about being, a chief marketing officer and really developing himself in that way. All of those things can be put on the back burner because I'm not paying the right amount of attention to them, and therefore. As soon as I get all these tasks out of the way, then I will put the dedicated time, energy, and effort. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, or now, for you in the book, it was 4 months later.
Yeah, 4 months. I'm like, wow, I've read a whole 20% of this book.
And I haven't, and I'm not doing anything that will necessarily put it there.
And so then we feel bad about ourselves. And we think, well, what's wrong with me? This is important. Why can't I? And so we either give up on it, Or we refocus. No, I am going to make myself, this is important and I'm going to make myself do it. And maybe we do for a little while. Maybe we do really carve out that time and make it happen. But the way that we're doing it isn't sustainable with everything else we've got going on. And so that's when you asked, did you break any streaks? I'm like, no, I didn't break any streaks because I've made it sustainable through, I look at all the things that could happen in life and say, I want to be able to do it even on all of this, recognizing and being honest with myself that I am not going to give the same amount, the same level of quality to this thing all the time. It's going to ebb and flow. That is life.
The consistency, this is where I talk about quality is the enemy of consistency. It really is. However, you need consistency to get quality. Therefore, consistency is the thing that you need to go after. And the way that you do that is through streaking. Through following the laws of streaking. I'm going to set up an activity that's so laughably simple, there's no reason not to do it. Law number 1. Law number 2, I'm going to keep a record that I've done that thing every single day because that adds to my self-credibility and also keeps the streak alive. And law number 3, I'm going to create a community around it because the community celebrates with me. It's not about accountability with the community. It's about the celebration.
About the celebration.
And boy, people love to celebrate and celebrate together. That's why I love the app, is because you can celebrate with someone as they keep their streak day to day. You download the streaking app, you put in your streaks, you friend people, and when you friend them, you can high five them on the things that they're getting done. It's not about, I need to be accountable to the community. I always thought that was the case, but that is not the case at all. The case in point is, I have a community because we celebrate together.
Because the accountability really is to yourself. You're being accountable to yourself.
Who were we talking with yesterday with one of our kids that said, well, if I lie about this, who's it really hurt?
Who is it
I
hurting?
think it was Lily.
Lily was talking about something and she's like, well, I guess if I lie, I'm just lying to myself.
About keeping a streak.
Whatever,
whatever streaks you do.
And so that's the amazing thing about the streak is because it's laughably simple, your accountability is to yourself.
Yeah, it really is.
And so the community is there to buoy you up and to strengthen you. And that's what we do to other people too, as we're a part of their community, is we buoy them up and say, you're doing great. One
of the things that you said and that I asked and that I wanted to emphasize, and then I want to get into a book review that we got, an independent book review, because it relates to what it is that we're saying here. I asked you why is it important to keep the streak alive? And you said something I wanted to emphasize. It is harder for us to start something than what we really think it is. It's easier to keep something going. That's why doing the laughably small thing of writing at least one sentence in your journal daily is important, is because it's so difficult if you stop that to get it started again. I mean, it takes, and case in point, we have a streaker out there that broke 5 streaks all in one because she was so tired that just life got away from her, and she didn't start him again.
Because she had a hard time
getting started again. And why? Because it's starting again is so dang difficult. That's why it's important to keep them going even after the high climactic event. Anyway, you were going to say something.
Do you think it's hard to? Why do you think it's hard to start again? Is it more than just? Is it more than just that we want to give it this time, and so thinking of adding this back into our life amidst everything else we've gotten going on is hard? Or is it just any time you start something, is there some law that says the inertia of starting is just
I think we can talk
bigger?
To Danny about this one.
Yeah, we need
And there's also, Jim Collins writes in his book, Good to Great, he talks about the flywheel effect.
Yeah.
And getting a flywheel is a very heavy piece of equipment. And to start it takes an enormous amount of energy. Once it's started, though, there is something that happens engineering-wise, physics-wise, that I don't know how to articulate here. But the momentum of that flywheel, now I can just do little things to keep it going. That is really what a streak does, is it keeps things going.
And because
like a flywheel,
because it's so hard to get started.
Which is, we got an independent review on the book from June Converse. Is that right? Am I saying her name correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, June Converse, who writes just a great article, a book review on streaking. She titles it "Streaking: A Promise Too Good to Be True." A little bit of question mark. Streaking: A Promise Too Good to Be True. When we wrote the book, I had not looked at it in the way that she articulated it here. She said there are 3 promises that we make right up front. And when I read that, I was like, oh, we do.
What does she say?
She says, Listen, here's the promise. The promise is let's see here. So the first promise is in the title, the simple practice of conscious, consistent actions that create life-changing results. So that's promise number 1, is that this will be life-changing for you. Promise number 2 is you build intrinsic value that is impervious to circumstance or environment. And that was written in the foreword by Chris.
That's right.
He said, and then promise number 3, for those who like to know the ending before reading the beginning, at the end of this book, you will have learned the laws that are necessary in order to bridge the gap between who you are and who you ultimately want to be.
You're right. When you put it that way, those are big.
I was just like, thank you, June, for pointing that out.
Yes.
And so then she goes on, and the next title is Skeptical or Cynical, and goes on from there. But you read this as well. What kind of stood out to you?
Well, I love that as you reiterate those 3 promises, as I've been doing this, I look at it and I'm like, no, they're true.
Every single one of them.
Yep, it really does happen. I feel like I have life-changing results. I think the thing that scares people is we look at life-changing as big, like dramatic. I was going one direction and I'm completely going the other direction. I feel like the life-changing results I've had have been small but sustained. Mm-hmm. That's what's been life-changing to me, is I've been able to have sustained change. It's small changes, but I've been able to do it. So some of them have been big things that I'm doing.
It sounds like you're dismissing it a little bit because they're small changes. It sounds like you're saying, well, they've been small. Do you see what I mean?
But I think when we say, life-changing, we think that it's got to be totally a different direction. My life is completely changed. And I guess my life is completely changed, but in small ways.
Mm-hmm. In other words, what I hear you saying then is it's achievable.
It's totally
Sometimes
achievable.
when you look at life-changing as this huge thing, it's not achievable. But what June is saying here, and what she wrote in her review, is that it is totally achievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's through the laws of streaking that you can do that.
So I'm just going to do a little promo here, because my favorite thing about streaking is that it actually works. So we've talked a lot about the book. There's a lot of books out there right now on habits and how to establish habits. And I would like to talk, and actually I'll ask this question to anybody out there. If you've read a book recently on habits, I would like you to delineate what habit you walked away. Can you say, I've got this habit because I read that book? Mm-hmm. And this is how long I've been doing it. Mm-hmm. Whereas with streaking, I can tell you
the number of people that have come up and said, I started a streak.
And this is what it is, and this is how long I've been doing it. That is life-changing. They've changed their lives by setting a streak.
That is so powerful. I mean, and that's why we wrote the book, and that's what we have. June talks a lot about the book, and I just want to say, she says, what is streaking? She says, first sentence, I highly recommend you buy this book. Thank you, June. We certainly appreciate that. Hey, we appreciate all of you fellow streakers and love to hear your streaking stories. Please let us know what they are at Jeffrey, Jeffrey, at streakingmastery.com.
And Jamie, Jami, at streakingmastery.com.
Until we talk again, enjoy and
set a streak and keep streaking.
It's the little things that